Go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy to get 20% off your first month of cognitive behavioural therapy, with weekly sessions online with a therapist, in addition to worksheets, a journal, meditation and yoga videos, and unlimited messaging. There's strong evidence that CBT can help people who hoard, and accessing therapy online can be affordable and accessible. Find out more and get your discount at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/online therapy.
Cool fact, a crocodile can't stick out its tongue. Also, you can get health insurance for a month or just under a year in some states. United Healthcare short-term insurance plans, underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, offer flexible, budget-friendly coverage for you. Learn more at uh1.com.
Say hello to a new era of mental health care. Cerebral is here to help you achieve your mental wellness goals with professional therapy and medication management support. 100% online. You'll experience the all-new Cerebral Way, an innovative approach to mental wellness designed around you. You'll get a personalized treatment plan from a therapist, prescriber, or both in a safe and judgment-free space. Your Cerebral therapist or prescriber will outline a customized plan with clear milestones along the way, so you can get to feeling your best. With Cerebral, you're not alone in your mental health journey. We're here to empower you to live a fulfilling life. So take that first step towards a brighter future and sign up today at Cerebral.com/podcast and use code ACAST to get 15% off your first month. Offer only valid on monthly plans. Other exclusions may apply. Offer ends July 31st, 2024. See site for details.
Rebag, your premier destination for luxury resale. Elevate your style with our curated collection of bags, watches, and fine jewelry. At Rebag, quality is our priority. Each piece meticulously vetted and verified by experts, ensuring your investment is nothing short of perfection. Buy and sell finds from the world's top brands, including Hermès, Chanel, and Cartier. Access expertly crafted and hard-to-find pieces that redefine luxury. Your next investment awaits at Rebag. Get 10% off your first purchase with code REBAG10. That's 10% off the luxury you deserve. Don't miss out. Head to Rebag.com and enter code REBAG10 at checkout. That's REBAG10.
Welcome to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder podcast. I am drowning in stuff and trying to find a way out. Listen as I explore the issues and delve deep as somebody profoundly affected by hoarding disorder. Find out more, including links to subscribe to the podcast and all my social media at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. Finally, I am not a doctor. I'm just a hoarder doing her best. So do seek professional support if and when you need it. So I'm going to start today with a review. And this review was left on iTunes UK, and it was a 5-star review from ZZCT24. And they said, "Thank you for helping me think about how to overcome this." And first of all, thank you for the review. They are always welcome. I really appreciate it. But also, you know what? Thank you all as listeners for helping me to think about how to overcome this as well. Because it can sometimes be stressful to come up with a weekly episode. It forces me to stay somewhat focused on understanding this weird problem and its potential solutions. And because there's never, well, for complex problems, there's never one solution that fixes everything. That's why I talk to different people with different specializations. It's why I research different ideas and different potential partial solutions all the time. In part for this podcast, in part to keep me focused, which was one of the reasons I started this whole thing in the first place, was to keep myself accountable, to keep myself focused. I didn't think necessarily that anybody would listen, but you are doing. Listen Notes, the website, says that this is now in the top 3% of podcasts for popularity, which is mind-blowing, frankly. Thank you, all of you who've helped that happen. It also makes me kind of worry about the other 97%, but every listener, every reviewer, everyone who shares it on social media, everyone who links to it from their website It does all really, really help. And special thank you again to the Bahamas, where I got up to number 7 in the Apple podcast chart for mental health. Again, Bahamas is showing up for me, and I appreciate every single one of you. I'm also going to do my occasional series of my success of the week and my weird dilemma of the week. The success of the week exists to remind myself that I'm doing all right, to remind you all that you're doing all right. Keeps me accountable, and also it's just good to not always focus just on a very personal level on what I feel I'm failing at. The weird dilemma of the week just helps me get something off my chest, really, when I know it's weird thinking, but I can't quite fix it, or I have fixed it, but I have at least recognized that it's very weird thinking. So my success of the week was in my car. Now, my car is not hoarded. You know, you see sometimes cars that there's no room for a person to get in. My car is not like that. However, if you look in the windows, it's quite often a bit messy. You know, like there's empty cups of tea that I picked up in the drive-through. There's like wrapping from an air freshener and, you know, just bits and bobs that I don't keep on top of. So, yeah, if somebody walks past, they might just think, that's a bit of a messy car. But they wouldn't think, gosh, that person must be a compulsive hoarder. I mean, they'd be wrong, but they wouldn't suspect it necessarily from my car. So I was in my car earlier and I had done some shopping. And before I came in, I was kind of sorting things into, like I was putting like the heavy stuff in my backpack because that's easier to carry, and the lighter stuff into a shopping bag, just kind of getting organized to carry it to the house. And then without even thinking about it, I just started tidying up the car. And I suddenly just noticed that I was putting those air freshener wrappers and teacups, not actual teacups. I don't know what you call them really. Just the paper cup that cups of tea come in, from whichever drive-through or takeaway is your favourite. And I was just putting those things in rubbish bags. I always keep a roll of rubbish bags in the car to make it that bit easier to do that, so I don't have to give it too much thought. But normally I'd kind of get home from somewhere and think, right, this looks really bad now, and force myself to do it. But this time I just found myself doing it. So so my success of the week is that I did it automatically, which is definitely unusual. So my weird dilemma of the week, as I slowly de-hoard, I'm starting gradually to have places for certain things. I'm nowhere near everything in its place and a place for everything, but some things are getting places. So like I've talked before about my food situation, the long life food like tins and cans and packets, and how I'm gradually getting to a place where I have a system. Now that system is still bags rather than the cupboards, but you know, progress is progress. Things at least have a place, even if it's not the ideal place. But like in my bedroom and in my front room, I know where the pens live now, that kind of thing. I'm starting to have places for things. And the weird dilemma is that now I have more places for more things. I keep having dilemmas about whether to actually put those things in the places I've allocated to them.
What?
Not because it's a hassle or it's difficult to do, because the places I chose for things were chosen quite deliberately in a way that makes sense to me. That it's that whole thing of trying to start a vastly new habit is very difficult, whereas tacking something onto an existing habit is more realistic and more doable. And in a similar way that you might stretch an existing habit, I'm kind of stretching where things live. So if there's normally a big pile of pens, then I will make sure that the place I allocate for pens is at least in that general area, that kind of thing. So I'm deliberately not choosing places for things that would be difficult. So it's not like I'm saying, should I put the pen there because it's a hassle to get to it, or because it doesn't fit, or because I don't really like it. The reason it's a dilemma is because if something is in the right place, it often doesn't occur to me to look for it there. I look everywhere else because things have not had places for so long. Well, not places I've respected and used consistently anyway. So what I keep finding is that I will look at, say, a pen and think, well, I do have a place for pens, but if I put it there, next time I need a pen, I'll probably start by looking in my bag and then on the shelf and in that pile, and it won't occur to me to look at where the pens now live. So that's my weird dilemma of the week. I'm hoping that as these places get more installed in my brain, it will start to come more naturally to not only put things where they're meant to be, but to look in those places for those things next time I need them. Watch this space, I guess. So I'm going to talk today about the time I hired a hoarding clearance firm. I've mentioned a couple of times that I've done this, but I've not talked in depth about it. And it was a weirdly mixed experience, and I know it's something a lot of people consider. So I thought it might be useful if I just talk really honestly about how that was and what it felt like and how it worked, whether it worked. So it was a few years ago, certainly pre-COVID, and there wasn't even a particular trigger for it. It wasn't like I had a deadline where my house was going to be inspected or anything like that. I think that I was very, very new to trying to tackle the problem. And I had been aware that I have this problem, obviously. Well, not obviously, actually. Some people are not aware, I guess, that they have the problem. But I had been aware I had the problem. But I had not been in any kind of state mentally to do anything about it. I had no idea how. I didn't know. And I kind of wanted it to be fixed. But I had no skills, no tools, no techniques, no strategies, no anything. And I got the idea that maybe you could pay people to just come and take everything away. Just make it go. And I Googled a few things and I discovered that hoarding clearance firm was pretty much the search term you needed. And there were a few. There weren't loads. I suspect that maybe in the States there are more, but in the UK at this point there were not loads. And I found one, and their website was quite reassuring in a couple of ways. One was that they have a lot of experience doing this. I wanted that. It was important to me that they had seen a hoarded home before. Another was that they had photos of previous homes they'd worked on, kind of before and afters, I guess. They also had testimonials. Now, Jan and I have talked about testimonials in other episodes. They're not always 100% reliable. However, in the context of the other reassuring things on the website, they were reassuring that these people were very respectful and that they solved the problem. Yeah, all great, really. But the other thing that made me call them rather than anyone else was that it was a family firm and that they have somebody in their family who hoards. And that's what got them into this business, basically. Now, there were certain factors that were important to me. One was that the van or lorry or whatever they came in didn't say, hoarding clearance firm on the side. This is something that, as regular listeners know, I'm very, very self-conscious about, very, very private about, feel a lot of shame over. And it was important that neighbours and just passing cars or whatever, didn't see anything really blatant. So that was important to me. And they had a plain van. It was just a big white van that could have been anything. And I liked that they had this family experience of it. And yeah, there were various kind of ratings and things, and on the website and elsewhere I looked at like reviews off the website. And it was clear they'd done this more than a few times as well. I know you can fake testimonials, but it's difficult to go around getting multiple before and after photos and all of that if they're not real. So knowing that if I just sent them an email, I would probably lose my nerve, instead I rang them and I said I wanted 2 rooms cleared, I wanted my kitchen cleared, and I wanted my bedroom cleared. I said that it was a hoarded home. I said that my bedroom was a lot worse than my kitchen. And they asked me a few questions, I think to establish like what they'd be dealing with. Was it a bit of clutter, or was it full, or anywhere in between? And then they booked me in for like the following week. So I didn't really have time to change my mind, which was good for them, but also I'm sure good for me, because again, it meant I didn't have the time to lose my nerve. If we had left the call with me saying, I'll think about it and let you know, I strongly suspect I would never, ever have called them back. And I can't tell you how anxious I was in that kind of week and a half before they came. This was the most intimate thing. Nobody had been in my home for so long. And not only were some people going to come in, they were going to go through all my stuff and take it away. I was anxious about what might go that I might regret. I did spend a lot of that week and a half making sure that the really important things were in bags in other rooms. So in the rooms that were not going to be cleared out, basically. Obviously, I didn't want my medication or my laptop or anything like that being taken to the tip. That would not be good. But I did try to be reasonable and not just shift everything into the spare room or whatever, because I was very clear that the whole point of them coming was that this stuff needed to go. I was less anxious, interestingly, about the stuff going than I was about how intrusive it felt, how exposing it felt. That, for me, at that stage was the biggest fear. And then on the day they turned up, as promised, quite early, and they started. And they cleared out load by load by load, interrupted by trips to the tip where they were emptying the van and then came back, filled it up again, back to the tip, filled it up again, and I didn't have anything to do with it. I was so ashamed. I was so stressed. I was mortified. Thankfully, it was a nice day weather-wise, because I basically just sat outside. I don't think I quite had my head in my hands, but I may as well have had my head in my hands. I didn't really have much conversation with them. The one guy, the guy I'd spoken to on the phone, I chatted to him a bit, but the other guys just got on with it, which I appreciated. I didn't want them to analyze me. I didn't want to have deep and meaningful conversations. I just wanted this task done and for them to leave in the nicest possible way. And it was humiliating. And it's not that they humiliated me. They didn't. They were very respectful. They just got going, got on with it. And it was a relief to see a lot of stuff go. It was a relief in one way to not know what most of it was. I knew that lots of clothes were going, and I would have the odd kind of like, oh, what if that top I really like has gone in one of these loads and I'll never see it again? There was so much in that load. What on earth was in it? But it also was quite liberating to just say, yeah, take everything in that half of the room, just take it away. So that lack of control over each and every decision was both terrifying and liberating at the same time. It's difficult to explain, but I liked somebody taking that out of my hands, and I hated somebody taking that out of my hands.
Here's a cool fact. A crocodile can't stick out its tongue. Another cool fact, you can get short-term health insurance for a month or just under a year in some states. United Healthcare short-term insurance plans are designed for people who are between jobs, coming off their parents' plan, or turning a side hustle into a full-time gig. Underwritten by Golden Rule Insurance Company, they offer flexible, budget-friendly coverage with access to a nationwide network of doctors and hospitals. Get more cool facts about United Healthcare short-term plans at uh1.com.
Think of all the sleep hacks you've ever heard. You could spend years trying them all, or you could instantly transform your sleep with Boll and Branch. They make the softest, most breathable bedding you'll ever feel. And it's all 20% off. That's their best sale of the entire season. Millions of sleepers love their buttery soft sheets, airy blankets, cloud-like duvets, and so much more. And you can try all of them for 20% off with promo code BUTTERY20. So hurry to bollandbranch.com today. That's BOLL and branch.com. See site for details.
And this all took hours. They were here a long time. There was lots of back and forth. There was lots of stuff to go. Oh, and when they arrived, the guy asked if he could take photos so he could have more before and afters, I guess. And I was not keen, but he was quite persuasive, and I let him as long as I wasn't in the photos. So there was no chance of me being identified as the person who lived there. Now, that is one of the things I ended up feeling quite weird about, but I will come to that in a bit. But eventually, they finished what they were doing. They'd cleared the areas I wanted them to clear. I could walk across my bedroom in a way that I hadn't been able to for a really long time. And that was very cool and very exciting. And I paid them, and it was a lot of money. It was a lot of money. And the fact that they were specialists in this area meant that it cost a lot more than if I just hired a man with a van and asked him to do it. But I knew in advance it was going to be expensive, and I knew that I was willing to pay more for their experience and for people basically who wouldn't come into a hoarded home and be stunned and horrified. I wanted people who knew to some degree what they were expecting, and I was willing to pay more for that. But it still kind of stings the amount of money it cost. And so they left, and I could walk across my bedroom and I could access the cooker more easily and various things, which were undoubtedly positives. But there were some things that felt less good. And one of those things was about the photos. I understand why he wanted before and afters. I know this because on his website I'd seen plenty of before and afters. I do wish that I hadn't consented to them being taken. I felt slightly pushed into it by somebody who I was already giving a lot of power to. I was already feeling very vulnerable. And it just felt, in retrospect, like I wish I hadn't been persuaded and that I'd been slightly strong-armed into it. You know, he didn't force me into it. But I wish I'd stood firm and said, actually, no, I'm not happy with that. He had promised that if he put them on the website, he wouldn't say, like, my area. He would say that it was a different part of the country to make it less identifiable. And I did look at the website a few times afterwards and never saw the photos anywhere. I haven't looked at it for a long time, so I don't know whether they ever went up. But that was difficult. Another thing that was difficult was that there are laws against fly tipping, which is like dumping rubbish on the side of the road or in a farmer's field or anywhere that it's not supposed to be. And so each time he took a load of stuff to the tip, he got a certificate from the tip saying that the rubbish had been responsibly got rid of. And he said that he would send me by email or by post those certificates, those records from the tip. And he never did. And it sounds like a small thing, but it made me worry for months, actually, that what if he'd taken the stuff and just dumped it somewhere random? And I know that local councils investigate fly tipping and they will go through the rubbish to try and find something with somebody's address on and then prosecute that person. And if, what if I got a court summons because it's illegal and it was my rubbish and anyway. And I'm sure he did take it to the tip and I'm sure it was all legal. But the fact that he didn't ever send that documentation over, even though I did request it, made me uncomfortable and gave me a kind of lingering anxiety for a period of time that I could have done without, basically. It was a small thing from his point of view, but it would have made the experience easier for me if I'd had that guarantee and that proof that the stuff had gone to where it was supposed to go. I mean, they seem like a very professional outfit. I'm pretty sure it went where it was supposed to go, but I would have liked that reassurance, that proof. But the big thing was that from that initial, yay, I can walk across my bedroom, yay, I can get to the oven more easily, it got bad again. And that makes it feel less valuable. Because when I had that done, I hadn't done any of the psychological work. I hadn't addressed any of that stuff. I hadn't learned how to maintain things. I didn't have any of the skills or the knowledge. And so despite all my assurances to myself, the house filled up again. I say that passively, as if it happened despite me. No, I filled the house up again. I take responsibility for that. And looking back on it, it was a temporary fix, basically. And for a temporary fix, it caused a lot of stress and cost a lot of money. And on the day that they came, it was so stressful and so awful that I kept saying to myself, I'm never going to let it get like that again, if only so that I never have to go through this again. This is so painful. It's so humiliating. It's so intrusive that I will not let anything build up because this is awful and I want to avoid this at all costs. And yet, despite all of that self-talk, despite all of those promises to myself, it did build up again. And I can only think that that's because it was treating the symptom without addressing any of the why the stuff had built up, why I couldn't get rid of it, why I hadn't been able to do it gradually over time. And I'm ashamed to say that I let it build up again. And I regret that I let it build up again. But it feels like treating a brain tumor with aspirin. Like it might briefly get rid of your headache, but you've still got a brain tumor and it's going to hurt again really soon if you don't do something about the brain tumor. I hadn't addressed the underlying problems. I hadn't learned anything about how to maintain a tidy home. I hadn't got any skills. And there was another thing, I think because of the photos mainly, and I guess the kind of growing paranoia over the documentation from the tip. I even got a bit, it was like, it's hard to explain, but I started to think like, what if he uses the photos to blackmail me? What if he threatens to report how I'm living because he's got photos and he's got all this evidence? And admittedly, I do acknowledge this is bordering on the irrational and thankfully proved to be fine. But what had an initial good outcome did turn into a kind of longer term stress. and a longer term stress that didn't even resolve the problem. And so I guess what I'm saying is hoarding clearance firms, they do a good job and they do a really important job. I think especially in situations that are absolutely desperate, and especially if the person in the home is perhaps disabled or just really, really stuck. I can absolutely see a role for them. But I think also it's important to say, don't be tricked into thinking that if somebody takes your stuff away, that fixes the problem. It doesn't. It fixes one aspect of the problem, but maybe just temporarily. The reason behind the problem, the reason the stuff was there in the first place, isn't addressed at all. You know, if your grandmother dies and she was a hoarder and you are not, and you now have a hoarded house that you don't know what to do with, then absolutely, if you can afford it, hire a hoarding clearance firm and let them do that work for you if you can. I can absolutely see its value in that kind of situation. But if, like me, you are hating the state of your home, but haven't done any real work on how you would maintain that improvement, haven't done any real work into what went wrong in the first place, then I feel like it's a temporary solution at best. And just be aware that some very nice blokes coming and clearing your house isn't necessarily the fix to every problem you've ever had around hoarding. So I guess just be aware it wasn't a all is now well experience. It was kind of a rough experience. But just because of the nature of it, they did do their best to make me feel comfortable. And I appreciated that. It was so stressful and so unpleasant. And I don't think I've ever had more adrenaline in my body than the build up to that day and the day itself. I just spent a week and a half mortified and then a full working day cringing to death. And there was this brief kind of, oh, I love my house again. But all too soon, it was less lovely and then less lovely than that and then less lovely than that. So if you're thinking about it, say you're not a hoarder, but, you know, somebody else is, and you're thinking, let's get their house cleared out. Again, it fixes one problem, but it's a difficult fix. And it's often a temporary fix. If you've inherited a home and the hoarder is no longer with you, then yes, it's a good fix. If the hoarder is still living, or if you are the hoarder, don't let yourself believe that it's the answer to everything, because there is a lot more that has to be done around it before it's going to be effective. I hope that's not too negative. I just wanted to be really honest, because I know a lot of people think, my sister's hoarding is driving me mad. I'm just going to get one of these firms and get them to empty a house. Or my own hoarding is driving me mad. I'm going to get one of these firms and get them to empty my house. And it's interesting that for me, although I did find getting rid of the stuff difficult, that was the least difficult part of it. It was far more the shame and the intrusion and the stress and the fact that however many years later you would look at my home and never know it had ever been cleared out. I owe it to you to be honest. I'm not going to pretend something is fine when it's not, and I'm not going to pretend things are not fine when they are. I always try to be honest, and it's important to me to be honest with you about this kind of situation. I think these places have a role. I think if this is what you're looking for, then going with specialists is probably immensely better than going with a random bloke who's never dealt with a hoarded home before. But I also just need you to know that it's not a panacea. In just 1 second, I'll give you my top tip of the week. In the meantime, please do subscribe to the podcast, review it. 5 stars would be amazing. and share it with your friends or anyone who might be interested or who might benefit from it. It all really helps. To find more ways to support the website, the podcast, and my overall de-hoarding project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support. Now, back to your top tip. So my top tip this week comes from one of my favourite podcasts, which is called Nobody Panic. And it's two comedians who talk about just life stuff, how to do things. And in this episode that I'm going to play you a mini clip from, they're talking about procrastinating and about things being good enough rather than perfect. Now, when they talk about the Edinburgh show, what that is every year there is something called the Edinburgh Festival, which is through the month of August. It's happening at the moment, in fact, where comedians from all across the UK and indeed across the world descend on Edinburgh and do lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of shows, usually stand-up comedy, but a whole load of stuff. And so when they talk about the Edinburgh show, that's what they mean. They mean her having a kind of hour of stand-up ready to go. So have a listen.
Yes, but also when you did your first Edinburgh show, I remember you booked the slot and you said you were going to do it before you'd written a show.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that is like, if you're a procrastinator, one of the big problems is we've now a deadline. Like, when are you going to do anything? But you gave yourself a deadline because you knew that you wouldn't do it if you didn't have a deadline.
I was super inspired by things like, the whole thing about like, do your 10,000 hours, or like, it's not your best thing, it's just your first thing.
Oh, that's great.
And I really like the quote from whoever it was who is in charge of Saturday Night Live for 20 years.
Lorne Michaels.
Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Is it actually?
Yeah, that's the exec producer.
Oh, wow.
Yes.
That was so quick. Also, I'd like to give you props for earlier. You said maladaptive, just really casually.
Oh, did I?
Yeah,
and
it looked really cool.
God, I've got chills from myself.
Out of the park. He or she said, I actually feel like this quote was from a woman, but we'll assume it was Lord Michaels, said, the show doesn't go out because it's perfect, it goes out because it's 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, which I thought was a really like freeing thing to be like, here we go. Like,
and you have to, it has
it's just
to happen.
getting it,
I really, really like that the show doesn't go out because it's perfect. The show goes out because it's 10 o'clock on a Saturday night. That is kind of the attitude we need to all incorporate a bit more, frankly. The hoarding, the bag of rubbish doesn't go out because it's the perfect bag of rubbish, that everything's been perfectly considered over a long period of time. It goes out because bags of rubbish need to go out. So think Saturday Night Live every time not every time you try and throw something out. That would get tiresome. But, keep that quote in mind. I really like it. I will link to Nobody Panic in the show notes. It is funny and surprisingly good life advice. All right. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next time. Thank you for listening to the Overcome Compulsive Hoarding podcast. You can find more online at overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk. You can find me on Twitter at @thathoarder and on Facebook at Overcome Compulsive Hoarding with That Hoarder. To find out more about how you can support this podcast and the overall project, go to overcomecompulsivehoarding.co.uk/support, and do subscribe to this podcast so you make sure you don't miss any future episodes.
If there's one thing that my family and friends know me for, it's being an amazing gift giver. I owe it all to Celebrations Passport from 1-800-Flowers.com, my one-stop shopping site that has amazing gifts for every occasion. With Celebrations Passport, I get free shipping on thousands of amazing gifts. And the more gifts I give, the more perks and rewards I earn. To learn more and take your gift giving to the next level, visit 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.